how many times you go to a bus station or anywhere and there's people on their phones or gaming or whatever. And I think it just takes out, the quality of what it takes to succeed and the hard work of getting somewhere, that a dollar doesn't just fall from a tree. You have to work hard at things. And I think it's important that you start young and you say, when you work really hard, this is what you get. Like, this is the end game. And I think we coddle our kids too much. I think that, we don't teach them to be strong. We want to jump on anything that is, anything that goes south. You want to protect them too much. And really, that's a recipe for disaster, is let them fail. Let them figure things out for themselves, and let them realize too that things don't fall off trees, that you have to work hard to get to anywhere you want to get to. And it's harder in this generation, but I think it really starts when you're at a younger age.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion, and today I have with me a champion with the heart of a lioness. Her name is Leah Goldstein. She is an international speaker and ultra-endurance athlete who volunteers time to encourage women and youth. Her self-defense training equipped them with the necessary skills to defend themselves, even save their lives. Leah supports at-risk youth, boys, and girls clubs. She shares her story of perseverance and commitment to accomplishing your dreams and goals, even in the face of hardship and danger. Leah's personal memoir, No Limits, sweeps its readers into the mind of a champion, battling bullies, sexism, terrorism, and the fear of merely ordinary existence. So if you have a fear of a merely ordinary existence, you want to strive for more, you want to get inspired to achieve your goals, you want to hear her incredible story of rising from the ashes like the phoenix a few times in her life and winning so many championships and never giving up regardless of what other people told her, what other doctors told her. Her perseverance is amazing. She's super inspiring and super kind, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the show. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Leah, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I can't wait for this conversation. We had a little chat just before we began, and I'm like, oh, let's stop. This is too good. So maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us your story.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have a big story. I was made in Israel. I was born in Canada. I was, oh my goodness, where can I start? I was bullied as a kid in school, just being different, had a lisp. My legs were uneven. My left leg was growing at a faster rate than my right leg. So I had a lot of issues. Doctors told my parents that I'd never be an athlete. So when you're different in school, you get bullied. So that was a big part of the reason why I joined the martial arts. I joined taekwondo. I fell in love with the sport. I became a national champion by 12 years old. A kickboxing coach discovered me. I was a world champion at 17 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I left Canada to go to join the IDF in Israel when I was 17. So I was, and then from there I worked at the police force, then the Belush, and then I discovered cycling in Israel. So I did duathlon. I was a national champion in Israel, and then I wanted to pursue that. It was kind of like my calling. And then I left the Middle East to pursue a cycling career when I was 30. And I rode for the national team for 10 years. I won many national championships. But I think I'm most well known for my ultra endurance transition. I was the first woman in 30 years to win the hardest race in the world called Race Across America, which is a 3,000-mile nonstop race. But the interesting thing is I did it when I was 50. That's when I decided to sport.
Wow, you look really young. No, you look pretty young. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a big story. I have a big story. Yeah.
Okay. Let's take you back to getting bullied at school and what was the psychology? How did you get yourself to become so strong?
Well, I get it. I know bullying is really tough, and it started for me at a really young age. I had pigtails and braces, and I had a limp and a lisp. My best friend was Matthew, red stringy hair and freckles. And, we were like a couple, right? And then every lunch hour we'd get chased. A group of 8 boys, I called it the Jason gang, would just chase us. And we'd run every lunch hour. And I hated school. I just didn't like it. And so back in my time, like, teachers often said, you got to figure things out for yourself. You don't want to tattletale. And my father really implemented to my sister and I is when, you're in trouble, you can't always run to other people. Because if you get used to that, one day you're going to run and there's no one to run to. So you got to figure things out for yourself. So after school one day, I got 1 hour of TV and I'm flipping through the channels and I see this young Asian man fighting 5, 10, 15 people. And I get excited. I go, oh my God, I have to learn whatever this guy is doing. And it was Bruce Lee and he was doing Kung Fu. So I begged my mom for lessons and we couldn't find a Kung Fu studio, but we found a taekwondo studio, which is a Korean form of self-defense. And yeah, and then I fell in love with the sport. The bullying stopped at school. I was a national champion at 12 years old.
How did the bullying stop? Was it something you?
I'll tell you
Yeah.
why.
How?
Yeah. Well, the thing is with martial arts, I was already physically strong. I mean, I ran every lunch hour, so we were really fit,
Oh
right?
gosh, that's
But it
terrible.
was the mental strength. Like mental strength is much more powerful than physical strength. Confident people, as you know, they stand different, they act different, they react different to things. There's a presence about them that's powerful, right? And that was enough to, for me to stand up. Like one lunch hour, I said to Matthew, I was already, I think, like a blue belt or something. I go, you know what? We're not running today. I was done. I was sick of it, right? So I stood up to Jason and I said, if you want to fight me, today's the day and I'm going to beat you up, right? And for, and that's all. That was enough for him just to walk away because I think people who bully other people, they're looking for the submissive one, like the dog with its tail between its legs, right? But once you stand up to them, I think it changes the dynamics. I mean, I was terrified, but I was done with running. And I promised myself that very day that I would never, ever be in that situation again as a child, as a teenager, as an adult. I would never be bullied again. And it stood by it because it doesn't just stop at kids. It happens in your preteens, in your teens, even as an adult. As an older person, it can happen as well, right? So I think that was such a significant part of my life that it just stays with me. And I remember how I felt prior to, getting this empowerment of no way, no one's going to treat me like that again. So it
Wow.
was going into taekwondo or martial arts. And I said, I never got into a fight in my life. I never had to use my skill. It didn't have to because it was what I used up here that prevented me from getting into these crazy situations.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wasn't I wasn't your age when I studied martial arts, but I did I got into an abusive relationship and I ended up in a hospital. And I promised myself that nobody's ever going to touch me like that again. And so I studied not for a long time, but enough to feel maybe like 3 years. Studied MMA and Aikido and a little bit of jiu-jitsu and that made a significant part in my recovery because I was a shadow of myself back then, and just to gain that power and strength through the body, through the discipline, through releasing all the anger on the yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even if you get like focus pads and some punching gloves and you just hit it, it's a release, right? You know what I mean? And it's just like these endorphins are released, right? It's a feel good. And there's something about knowing how to defend yourself that gives you that confidence, right? So I think self-defense is a really good way to start, with mental strength, right? But like I said, nowadays, I mean, there's a lot more support for people who are getting bullied. It's not tolerated anymore, and it shouldn't be, right?
Right.
But I think, I mean, sometimes you have to take things into your own hands, right? And I think it's night and day once you've gotten to that point where you're saying enough is enough, right? And enough in a good way, not for self harm, but to empower yourself and go, this not going to let that happen. It's no way.
Yeah,
There's no way, right? So I think in a lot
absolutely.
of times it's up to you or to the parent or whatever to help the child or the adult or whatever, right? But it's not okay. And it's, and even, and be verbal too, is tell people because, people who bully, they're not praised upon, not anymore, right? Because it's a sign of weakness, really.
Mm-hmm.
People who are bullying other people, it's a sign of weakness and cowardness.
Right.
It's not something praised.
Yeah. So you won all those championships and then you decided to leave the comfort of your home and come to Israel.
Well, I knew I was going to do that when I was, I think, 5 years old or 7 years old. I never told anyone, right? But we went back. All my family is in Israel. We immigrated when when I said I was in the oven. My sister was two. My parents were very young. My dad was a sailor, so he docked in Vancouver. So he just thought it would be an easier life, right, to
Hmm.
come back to Canada. And then eventually they were going to go back, but that didn't happen. But anyways, so we would go every summer to Israel, and I knew members of my family were involved in something secretive, and it was intriguing to me. I didn't know what it was, but it was something that I felt like I was meant to do. And I
Yeah.
realized, and you think like, you're fantasizing James Bond or whatever, and you think that feeling would diminish as you get older. But for me, it only intensified. I wanted to go even more, right? So after I won the world championship in kickboxing, I was a world champion in bantamweight.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh, wow.
And then I left Canada, and I mean, I had a lot of opportunities after that. I mean, they wanted to make, believe it or not, the Karate Kid. Have you heard of that movie,
Yes.
The Karate Kid? They wanted to make a female version of the Karate Kid. There were producers, and they were eyeing me, right? And this was kind of in the talks. I have the letter from Paramount, and I said no, that wasn't my calling. I wasn't an actress. I didn't want to do something like that. I was very shy, and I had a mission. And when I focus on something, I'm going. So I left Canada, and I joined the Israel Defense Force, the IDF.
Wow, you have a very strong set of values. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually studied acting in New York City, wanting to get that part that you didn't want.
Yeah. Well, I did. It was funny. I did films for because my coach was from China, right? And his goal was just to use that as a title. He didn't want me to be a kickboxer. He wanted me to use that. I can use that as a title and to do films in China, right?
Mm.
So I did a one commercial, and it was just ridiculous. They would dub my voice, and you know what I mean. And I said, "This is not for me. This is not what I was meant or born to do." So
Let's go to the IDF time. What did you learn that? What like being in the service did to you? Because I know it changed me. Like I came in very kind of like careless, selfish teenager, and with I left differently. What was it like for you?
well, it takes a child and it turns him into a strong adult, right? A strong person, strong, confident. I mean, I remember going on the bus, and half the bus of girls were crying, and my God, and I'm yay going to the military. I was so excited, right?
For basic training?
Yeah. And then as soon as they closed the doors, they was like, oh, really disciplined. But I mean, it's good to put you through those tough times, right? And I think every country should have a military. I think here in Canada, I think our kids are too bored. That's why they get into trouble, right? Because I
Yeah.
think the military is so good because it really well, it teaches you self confidence. It teaches you skills that everybody should learn, and they also focus on what you're good at, right? Like if
Mm.
you want to be a doctor or a dentist or whatever, you can still do it, but you can, you learn, and then you do your service as a dentist or doctor in this service, and then when you're released, you have a skill, right? With me, I wanted to do more secretive stuff. Now because I wasn't born in Israel, mind you, I volunteered to the service, right? So it's a little bit different, but I ended up being in Bachmone, which is behind Wingate. I was in Madasi. So I was an instructor actually for the Krav Maga division. The,
Wow.
the, the commander there saw me. And so I actually trained the commandos, trained special units because of my skill as a kickboxer. Because mind you, I had not only kickboxing skill, I had taekwondo. My dad was a professional boxer, so he taught me the skill of boxing.
Wow.
Shahar, the instructor there, taught me some jiu-jitsu. So we combined the three together. I mean, lots of different forms of self-defense, and you can create something that's how Krav Maga was created. So yeah, we trained many different soldiers and different scenarios, and it was a very great experience.
Yeah. And so, what do you think it takes to have that champion mindset? Um, no matter how old you were, you just keep winning. How do you do that? What's the mindset? How can I get some of that?
Well, I mean, I think too, we focus too much on the winning, though,
Right.
right? Like, my mother really instilled in me, like, even when I didn't, I mean, I've done a lot of things, but even when I didn't succeed or didn't win, let's say I came in second or I came in last, my parents were equally proud of me, right? The only time you fail is when you quit. That's the only time you fail. Even if you aim to do something and it's not the outcome that you want. Like say you're planning for a race and then you end up, coming in second to last, for example. The point is you made it to that finish line because whatever you do, the point is getting to that finish line. Because during that experience, you learn about the things that you did wrong. And then you'll come back and you'll always be better. You can perfect it, right? So failure is a part of learning and it's a part of winning. So I think the focus too much is what the end result is. It should be more the journey to get there because you are going to have fallbacks, right? And I think that's really important as we put too much pressure on ourselves, especially doing something for the first time, is that we have to be the super great at whatever we're doing, right? I always say the first time you do something is a learning experience. The second time it's a racing experience or a winning experience. So I think the pressure is always too much that we put on ourselves. And also we look for validation too much from outside our own kind of aura, right? Like from your friends or your family or your spouse, and then if they don't encourage you, it's almost like, maybe I shouldn't do it. Like you start to doubt yourself. It's self-doubt. And I think the strength comes within. Is you don't need validation from anyone else. And I think you have to start with first being your biggest support system, and that's you, and not expecting it from other people.
Right. How do you support yourself?
Well, I mean, how badly do you want it? Right? I mean, if you wanted something that bad, are you willing to sacrifice, your luxuries on the way there? Right? You know what I'm saying? It's a matter of how much do you want. Like for me, when I go into a race or I'm doing something or I'm speaking or whatever, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to get there. And I'm going to put a lot of things on the shelf, right? Like, for example, when I was training for the hardest race in the world called Race Across America, there was no phones or friends or family or whatever. My personal life was put on a shelf. And I narrowed in on that one thing. And it was, but those sacrifices are worth the payoff at the end. And I think that's really important. It's harder as you're younger, too. Like when I was a child, when I was aiming to be the world champion in kickboxing, I didn't have friends or parties or good times. I trained 3 times a day. And I also had to be homeschooled because I had no time. And I trained 3 times a day, 7 days a week. My coach didn't give me any time off, right? So that's the sacrifice I had from 13 years old right till 17. That was my life. I was so structured, but I ended up being an undefeated champion. I was a provincial champion. I was a North American champion. I was a 2-time Canadian champion. And at 17 years old, I was the undefeated champion of the world. But that's what it took, was lasering in. And I also knew as a teenager, good friends and family and parties, they're always going to be around, but unique and special opportunities won't, And so I understood that as a child, but I was so, it was my passion that this is what I wanted to do. And you just kind of have to have a tunnel vision till you get there. And then you can have celebrate and fun, right? But whatever you do, you have to really put it on paper and go, look, this is what it's going to take for me to get there. And also put on paper what happens if things start to go south. How are you going to correct it? So I think you have to be a realist in whatever you choose to do, right? Of the sacrifices. And it is going to be a roller coaster ride. You're not always going to go this way. It's going to go this way. And then it'll go up, right? So be prepared for that.
Absolutely. And how do you think this translates into your business life as a speaker and everything that you do today?
Well, I think it's funny because I never thought in a million years that I'd want to speak. I never felt comfortable in front of large groups, right? I remember I have a really good friend who was holding an event and she begged me to do it. And I only did it because I really like her. I said, okay, I'll, because you're my good friend, it was a big presentation. It was a place called Grand Prairie up north, minus 100 there in the winter. But anyways, it was for women. It was a women's, like a women's day, And so I did my presentation. I told them more the struggles and stuff like that to young women and to kind of the teenagers and then the, people more my demographic. And the feedback I was getting was insane. I had people like weeks later coming up, there was something you said that I just needed to hear. And being responsible for helping others get through a difficult time, bring clarity or help them achieve a goal was something I had never felt before doing anything else in my life. So never say never and never be afraid to try new things, especially the stuff that makes you feel the most uncomfortable, because you never know where it's going to lead you. And because of that, I said, you know what? It's worth the nerves. And I still get nervous. I hate it. You know what I mean? I get more nervous doing that than anything else, right? But I think, sometimes you just need to hear somebody else's struggle to help your own, going, wow, and I wasn't gifted as a cyclist. It took me 10 years to finally reach that point of where I wanted to get to. I started at 30. The federation told me, you're way past your prime. You're 30 years old. You're an old lady for the sport, right? They say it'll never happen. And it didn't happen until I was humiliated at age, I think, 36. And, a director had commented how I was wasting my time and I couldn't climb. And I think that triggered something in me that said, you know what? I'm going to prove to them what I can do. And I came back the following season at 37, 38, being one of the best riders in the world. I was untouchable.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And it was a matter of what happens upstairs, and I mean, you can look at my profile. That's what it was. I had the best years on the bike. And after a deadly crash in 2005, I had the mother of all crashes. I landed on my face at 85 kilometers an hour. And I basically, everything ripped all my teeth. My lips were ripped off. I had facial surgery. I was in a wheelchair. I broke every single bone in my body. 2005. And it was in Velo News. It was considered one of the worst crashes in the history of the sport. And that was when I was kind of reaching I was at the top of my career. Finally, after 8 years, and bang, I lose it in 30 seconds. It was a crash in Bend, Oregon. I'm bedbound. And doctor said that I would never come out of it. That was my fate, that I'd never walk again. If I walk, it would be with a walker or a cane.
It seems like your soul came here to do some kind of a huge correction and on yours.
I don't know, but you know what? I was bedbound and I came out of that crash in less than a year, and I became even stronger and winning even more races. And I had the best years on the bike at the ages of 39, 40, 41, and 42.
Wow.
Despite what I was told like 10 years earlier, I was too big, I was too small, I was way too old. I was a savta, I was a grandmother, right? So,
that's amazing. Okay, how did you recover? Like this is like you finally hit the top. How do you recover?
Recover from the crash?
How do you recover mentally first? Like
in that particular mode, listen, I had worked 8 years to finally get to this point. And all of a sudden it's taken away from me. And I have one doctor, and telling me it's done. And there was no way. I had unfinished business in the sport. And I made a promise to myself that I don't care how long it takes, the kind of pain I'm going to get through. I'm going to get back on the bike. I'm going to race again, and I'm going to come back even stronger than I did before this all happened. And as soon as I made that declaration to myself, I started my recovery right there and then. And the only thing I could do at that point was contract my abs. I was bedbound. I couldn't do anything else. But every day I did something today that I couldn't do the day before. And believe you me, being in that positive mode, I could feel my body starting to bind. I seriously could feel I know that sounds hokey pokey, but I think the mind is a really powerful thing. And all I did was visualization and visualizing myself getting back on the bike. And doctors were floored at how fast I was recovering. And that's all I did. Is I'm just saying that I didn't let the negativity eat at me. Because you know how stress will cause cancer, and negativity will stop you from doing anything. I didn't let anything enter these years that I didn't want to hear. And I think that was a big part of my recovery.
How did your family and friends react?
They were horrified. I remember the look on my mom's face, right? Because like this is all sewn back on. Like my teeth were all cracked, broken, or gone. I had major facial surgery. I mean, if you go into my website, you can see the pictures of the crash, and my presentations. I show it, right? Both my arms were broken, fingers, all my fingers were cracked or whatever, ribs were cracked. Both my legs were broken. I mean, it was like taking a pretzel and stepping on it. That's the intensity. So when remember, I wasn't really a spring chicken. I was in my 30s, right? You know what I mean? So, but I think also my recovery too is just being I've always been really healthy, right? I've always been very fit. I always cared about my diet. I never smoked as a kid, never drank, never did drugs. So I'm not saying that's the sole reason, but I think it was a big part of how I was able to recover quite quickly.
I think the hardest part for somebody like you was actually to see the reflection from your loved ones, the way they look at you, the way they pity you, the way they're worried about you. How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, my parents have always been a huge support system. I mean, the look on my mother's face was enough for me to understand that it wasn't good. They wouldn't put a mirror in front of my face because it was that horrific. And I remember kind of my sister was wheeling me out one day because I just wanted to get some fresh air. And we went into an elevator and a little kid came in and started to cry, couldn't look at me. And I go, okay, I must not look very, that's how, that's how bad it was. Right. And so I was kind of self-conscious a little bit. And I just asked my sister, could you just put a hoodie on me? Right. Because people were staring, they were trying not to make it obvious, but they were staring. That's how bad it was.
How
you know,
terrible.
Yeah. So, I mean, your loved ones are worried about you. They don't know what to do. But my mom just was always supportive and saying, you know what, I have no doubt that you'll get back on the bike. So she said, even though later on, she thought there was no way you're getting back on the bike. But she didn't tell me that, right? And even in the cycling community, I went to a place called Richmond where a lot of cyclists, they just ride. It's just a flat piece of road. And I would have my mother drop me off there when I was in my wheelchair, and I would wheel down this stretch of road where a lot of cyclists, and they would see me and wave to me, and they thought that was my fate, that I'd come out of the wheelchair eventually, but I wouldn't get back on the bike. There's no way.
That's incredible. So when you get those responses from people that heard you speak, how do you think you changed their life, or how did they tell you they changed their lives?
Well, I mean, that, your possibilities are endless once you put your mind to it, and that you don't accept negativity, and I wouldn't accept it, right? When somebody says you don't have talent for something, and I think I really proved that you don't need a gift to excel in anything you choose to do, because there's a gift we all have, and it's called the gift of work, right? To succeed in anything you don't have to be gifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't. I just knew how to work really hard. That I think was the biggest gift that we all have, not just me. It's that gift that we don't utilize enough, and I think that's really important, right? Is no matter what situation you're in, if you're determined to get to wherever you're getting to, it is possible. And it's a matter of you and only you to get there.
Well, if somebody's listening to you right now and they're like, well, that sounds really nice, Leah, but this kind of you're special, you're a world champion, this is something that you have. I don't have that. You can accomplish those goals. I don't think I can. What would you tell them?
I'm not special in anything I choose to do. As a cyclist, are you kidding? When I'm gonna say I had talent in martial arts. I excelled really good. But when I went into cycling, I went from winning races, and even in Israel, I was great at, I won in the Madassi, whatever. I was one of the best soldiers for, breaking records and whatnot. I go into the sport that I have a passion for, and I'm thinking this pattern of success is going to transition into cycling. I went into this sport, and I would go into these races, and I would come in so last, and I mean so last, I wouldn't even know where the finish line was. I'd see a car in an empty parking lot going, okay, this must be it, because that car was mine. And it wasn't just, 1 or 2 years. It was, I was the laughing stock in the sport. Even like my teammates were saying, maybe you should reconsider and just race, because I was trying to race in the pro level. They go, just race age category, and at least you'd be able to race. Because I would get dropped. The race would start and I'd be so far behind, I wouldn't even know where to go. That's how bad it was, and it was a really hard time, because I had left something I was so good at in the Middle East, to something that I was so terrible at, but I loved so much. And that's what I'm saying. It took me 8 years to get to that point where I dominated the sport. And the transition happened when I was publicly humiliated. And it was such a hard criticism that it made me feel this big, right? And I said, I remembered the bullying, in elementary school, and I'm going, there's a gift, that gift of work. And I said, there's no way. I'm going to show them exactly who I am and what I can do. And it was a matter of transitioning and saying that you're not going to work twice as hard as your competitors. If this is what you want, you're working 3 times as hard as your competitors. And that's exactly what I did. I came back the following season. I had dropped about, 12 pounds, because weight is a big factor in climbing. I hired a climbing coach. I moved to a more hilly part of Canada called Vernon. I'm in the Rockies. I married the mountain, the ski resort, and I climbed that freaking thing every day, twice, 3 times a day. And I came back the following season, not only winning hilly races, but setting new records. And that was 1 year prior to my crash. So it took me so I'm not definitely wasn't gifted. I thought I was gifted because in Israel when I was racing, I was a big fish in a small pond. There wasn't a lot of competitors. When I come to North America, I'm a shrimp in an ocean. You know what I mean? So, wow, so there was this transition there, right? So, but it took work and it took me, like I said, 7 years to get there. 7 years. And it was a hard 7 years, right? But that's what it takes when you want something that bad is what are you willing to do to get there?
But what about personal life? What about time with friends and
It's funny because with what I do, especially with ultra endurance racing, you're kind of surrounded around people kind of like you, right? So there's not a lot of us, right? I didn't have a big social life. I didn't have time because I was always training. But that was what drove me. That's what made me feel alive, right? I wasn't a big party person. I wasn't great around a lot of people. I'm a person that has one or two really good friends, and then that's kind of how I am, right? And also the people that surround me, they're not these high maintenance friends where they expect me to call them every single day. I have great friends in the United States all over for years. I talk to them once a year, but when we talk like we've spoken every single day, right? So I think for me, I mean, like I said, that wasn't super important, the whole social aspect of it. I think it was, for me, it was kind of being surrounded on people with kind of the things that I do. And that's kind of how I am, is people that do the things that I love. But those are like, the people that I hang in with, that I like to be around with. And my family, my best friend is my mother. She will be and always will be. And I speak with her every single day, being around my father, my sister, my two dogs. So to me, that's enough fulfillment.
that's great. That's great. What's your routine every day now? Like what's the next goal and what do you do to go there? Because obviously you probably have another new goal. Because it seems like if you don't accomplish, you're not satisfied.
Well, I am on the speaking circuit, so I do speak. And we also have, when I came out of retirement, when I turned 50, I had a film crew follow me and through kind of Race Across America, coming back, what it takes and whatnot. And the film was picked up by JRB, which is a big production company out of Los Angeles right now. So they're pitching the film, hopefully to sell it, which they have a tentative deal right now. So we're kind of focusing on that. And then last year I did my first unsupported race of 7,000 kilometers, because I've always done races where I have a crew of 9 people. And so I didn't do as well as I wanted to. I actually won the race. I still won it, but I was not happy with my time. So I'm going to try and do that race again. It's called Transamerica, and it starts in Astoria, Oregon, and then it ends in Yorktown, Virginia. So being a little bit smarter now. I told you the first time is a learning experience, second time is a racing experience. So that's my focus, is to really try and maybe hopefully set a record in that race.
How long does it take to do a race like that?
The record is 18 days for the women. I think 17 for the men. So I did it in 20 days. So I'm hoping to knock out 2 days. I had a lot of mechanical issues, technical issues. Mind you, I can't have any help. I can't call anybody that I know for, food, navigation, for booking motels, or I have to do everything on my own. So imagine that you're on a bike, you're carrying an extra 35 pounds, and you can't be too heavy because you want to ride fast. And if something goes south, like any mechanical issues, you have to fix it. Food, gas station food, right? So you have to do everything on your own. So it's quite challenging, going across the country. And then I'm riding through the night many times, and it's not always safe, especially as a woman, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That sounds so scary.
I know, but actually on the bike, I don't look like a woman. Like I'm hooded. I actually look like a man, boy, or man, or whatever. So I'm not having my pigtails flying out. I have short hair. So, yeah, there is a risk, but there's a risk to everything. So far, I've had no issues, but that's the goal. It's to do Transamerica again this year, and hopefully.
How much do you sleep during the race and how much do you eat?
Well, I go through the first night. So I try to ride straight about 45 hours without sleep. And then I try to do about 3 hours every 24 hours. Because you don't have, it's long ways, it's 7,000 Ks.
It doesn't sound humanly possible.
Yeah, well, that's how I've done race.
Are you an alien?
No, that's how ultra racers race. Like when I did Race Across America,
That's insane.
it was 90 minutes of sleep and then little power naps of 8 minutes because there's sleep cycles that you don't want to hit the REM cycle of the super deep sleep, right? So,
But you don't get delusional when people don't sleep so much? Don't you get like
oh yeah, hallucinations, big time.
you get hallucination in the middle of the race?
Oh yeah, and especially in Race Across America. But in Race Across America, I have a crew of 9 people, so they can navigate me a little bit better. In this race, when I was hallucinating, I know when I'm hallucinating, when I see things or objects or whatever, or things firing at me that,
What kind of hallucinations did you have? That's insane.
yeah, in the most scary one, I think was in Race Across America. I was on 90 minutes of sleep and it was 8 days in and I was riding, I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning and I saw a big black leopard jump at me from the
Oh.
block and I veered over to the other side of the road and it wasn't. And then all of a sudden I saw King Kong floating in the air. And so you start to learn how to navigate your hallucinations better by not looking around too much. Because at everything you see, it's something that's not there. So I would just look on the road and I would see small little characters or whatever and not look anywhere else. That's it. And
That's
then I
funny.
knew I'm good. Because once you start looking too much, because everything is a hallucination. Everything you see, big rocks turn into monsters and boulders. The deer crossing signs, those deers are actually crossing the road or children crossing. You see things that are just not there. So, I mean, but I got better at learning how to navigate them. And then in Transamerica, the race that I'm on my own, you have to be careful because I have to be coherent enough to learn because I have to navigate. So I have to, be able to understand that if I get to that point where my brain is no longer functionable, that I have to stop and rest. So that might mean sleeping in a ditch for 30 minutes or 15 minutes or 10 minutes. So there's a science to it, right? But you have to be responsible enough to realize that it can be very dangerous. I mean, when I talk about danger, last year I did another ultra race called the Hoodoo 500, and I was very ill prior to racing. I got like a cold, and I didn't sleep for 2 days prior. So going through the night, I was starting to doze off, and I actually fell asleep on the bike, and I veered over to the other side of the road, and I hit the barrier, and I did a flip in the air. So that's how it can be very dangerous. Yeah, of actually falling asleep on the bike. And that was a wake up call for me that anytime I get to that point, I unclip and I rest for all you need is 10 minutes. I'm not kidding. Your brain thinks when you come out of a 10-minute nap, your brain thinks, well, I just had a nice 8 hour sleep and it's night and day.
How much sleep do you get every day?
On racing or non-racing?
No, non-racing days.
Oh, non-racing days? I get about from 5 to 7.
Oh, like an average.
Yeah. But when I'm training, though, I do a lot of sleep deprivation training, right? Like I'll go through the night or I'll sleep 90 minutes because I want my body to know how to respond to that kind of stress. And I also want to know what I go through and how to navigate it. So it's important to train under the extreme, conditions that you're going to face during races. So I try to replicate when I'm training what I'm going to go through when I race. So it's not so foreign and I know how to handle it. Because mind you, in ultra endurance racing, the playing field with men is very even because it's not a physical, it's a mental game. That's why a lot of ultra endurance races, not only in cycling, but in running, women are winning the overall, right? I've won 2 or 3 overall because it's a matter of how strong you are upstairs and how you can navigate that, right? Because in Race Across America, when you're so sleep deprived and so tired, you're going to experience every element of pain you can think of, back, neck, knee, constipation, diarrhea, swelling. And you're just going to be happy. You're going to be sad. You're going to be excited. You're going to be mad. You're going to go through your range. It's like you're bipolar almost, right? So you have to learn how to navigate that. And your crew has to learn how to navigate you too during those, episodes. So that's why in ultra endurance racing, I say it's 20% physical and it's 80% mental.
Do you think in the long run, this type of extreme training, is it good for your brain or is it bad for your brain?
I mean, I think if you don't take it to the extreme, I think, I have an off season where I don't do it. I enjoy not riding for about 3 or 4 months out of the year. I like to run and hike. I live in Canada, so it's bloody cold here. It's minus 16 outside right now. So I think like taking a break from it and just realizing that it is, something you don't do all the time. But when you do it, I think just doing 1 or 2 races a year, it's not gonna hurt you. Actually, I think it'll just make you stronger. And when you do something like that, I think you realize of what the human body is really capable of doing. So, and it just gives you this empowerment too of going, wow, look what I just did. So I think for me, it's a physical thing. It's also something that I really love to do is really push myself beyond my limits. So if I can still do it, I'm going to still do it.
You're probably going to do it till well into your 90s.
Maybe I'll be the oldest person.
That's amazing. That's very inspiring. So somebody who doesn't do all those ultra races like me, what are some tips on getting into the mindset, getting your body in shape, getting into that discipline? You said like for you it's a non-negotiable. It's how badly do you want it? But what if I don't want it that badly, and I kind of want to enjoy my life, but I do want to get more fit and stronger and all that. How can I change my mindset to train more, to be more disciplined, to eat better?
Exactly. I mean, I think people can't relate to what I do, but I think they can relate to the journey of getting there and how you get started, right? Like for me, like for you, maybe running your a 5K and just finishing is equivalent for me, winning Race Across America. That feeling of, yes, I did it. I did the work and I got there. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it's in comparison, like, you know what I mean? I mean, that's where you start. And I think it's baby steps. And I think too, is kind of, we're always afraid to come out of our comfort zone. Is we're so afraid of something will happen or whatever. But sometimes you have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's a good start, right? And I think once you do it once, just say, you know what, I'll do it this time and I'll never do it again. That's what I say whenever I'm racing Race Across America. And then 2 weeks later go, that was so much fun. I want to do it again.
I really like that tiger and gorilla that showed up in my way.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, you just think about, wow, that was just, there's more good experiences than there are bad experiences.
I'm joking, of course.
Yeah, of course. But I'm just saying, even with other people who want to do small, not necessarily in athletic fields, in anything that you choose to do, if you want to start a small business or whatever, right? And I think the thing is stop talking about it and start doing it. Like, don't open your mouth. I think a lot of times we say things, but we're not making any sense. We're not saying anything. We're just making noise. Right? So I think like kind of like that saying, "All bark and no bite." And I think the action part is more important than the verbal part of it, and that's a start, right? Is and what do you have to lose? Like, do you really want to have regrets when you're 80 or 90 or 100 years old, or sitting in your deathbed saying the words "I wish" or "what if"? And that was a big thing with me and my grandmother. Like her, she got cancer at 60 and she so badly didn't want to die. And I remember the last time I saw her, she was like a big babushka Russian, 200 pounds down to 90 pounds. And she was like shaking her finger at me saying, you never, ever want to be sitting on your deathbed saying the words "I wish" or "what if." It's a one-time deal. It's now or never. And those are powerful words. You don't want to be, and I'm getting older myself. I'm in my mid 50s now, right? And I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want to say I should have done that. Just do it, because you will have regrets. And remember, you only regret the things you haven't done, not the things that you do. So that's really important.
I love that. So I guess taking action is what builds confidence. What other things do you think build confidence?
I think just, doing small things, little tasks, right, is really important. And questioning yourself of why you think you can't do it. I mean, if you look at really successful people, anybody, like, movie stars or whatever, you always hear the end game, but you don't hear about the journey of them getting there. Some of them were homeless, had nothing, lived in their cars, like it's crazy. My story is nothing compared to other people, but you only see them on the pedestal because that's what we're so attracted to. Go back to where they started from. And I think that's what inspires and gives people motivation, to do things on their own, is people that got there and they don't have special talents or gifts or whatever. They just wanted it that badly. And I think that's where you have to start, to stop looking at the end game and start looking at where it starts from. And that's one way of starting your own journey.
Right. And I'm looking at the younger generation, teenagers, young kids, my son. Everything is instant. Amazon is pretty instant. You get the delivery the next day. Depends on where you are. Now I'm getting the delivery 3 weeks later, but still quite fast, right? I can think about it and it appears on my doorstep. Or TikTok or Instagram. Everything is so quick, so quick. Everybody's so successful. Everybody's so beautiful. Everything's so instant. How do you educate young people or kids to have this view of taking action, being patient, and all that good stuff?
I think that's a tough one because of technology. Like how many times you go to a bus station or anywhere and there's people on their phones or gaming or whatever. And I think it just takes out, the quality of what it takes to succeed and the hard work of getting somewhere, that a dollar doesn't just fall from a tree. You have
Right.
to work hard at things. And I think it's important that you start young and you say, when you work really hard, this is what you get. Like, this is the end game. And I think we coddle our kids too much. I think that, we don't teach them to be strong. We want to jump on anything that is, anything that goes south. You want to protect them too much. And really, that's a recipe for disaster, is let them fail. Let them figure things out for themselves, and let them realize too that things don't fall off trees, that you have to work hard to get to anywhere you want to get to. And it's harder in this generation, but I think it really starts when you're at a younger age. I mean, honestly, if I had young kids, I wouldn't let them sit on their phone for 3 hours. No way. You're going to go do something creative with your mind and body, and then you're going to get the phone. And I think it starts when, you're really young, and it's hard to change that when when they're so used to something. And that's a really hard one, right? But I think that's where things have gone south, is the creativity. Remember when I was a kid, my mom would make me play outside till it was dark, and I'd come back inside the bike and being creative with things, and with activities and stuff. And we didn't have technology like we do today, so it's really tough. But I think is just turning off the phone, turning off the computer, and really grounding yourself back to nature is a good start. And teaching your kids of how what it takes to be the best at anything you choose to do or in succeeding, that it starts with really hard work and a lot of sacrifices, and things don't come quickly. That's not reality, that's fantasy.
Right. Oh my goodness, I'm struggling with that. Like with my little one, I want to protect him from the world, and I want to have everything. It's just yeah.
But you think about, you do that now, but what about when they're 15? What about when they're 20? Like, then they won't have the tools to protect them themselves, right? Like, you want
Yeah.
to guide them, don't just let them whatever. Like, you want to guide them, but let them do it themselves. I know it's really hard, but that's how
Mm-hmm.
you, like, that's how my dad did it with my sister and I. When we were bullied, my sister got beat up in high school, and he just says, figure it out, figure it out. You can't come running to me every time something goes whatever south. You can do it.
Mm,
I'm here to support you, but you do the core work of it, and I'll guide you. But you do it, not me. And I think that's really important with anything you choose to do, right? With your kids, or and I think passing that on is really hard, because I know you want to protect your kid, but really think about it: are you protecting your child? Right? Are you giving them the
mm-hmm.
skills they need to be strong, independent individuals, boy or girl? It doesn't matter, right? So I think you have to think that way, right? Like, you're always going to be the loving parent, but you also have to be the smart parent and the realistic parent of, I want my
Mm,
kid to be strong and independent and never be in a situation where they won't know what to do.
absolutely, I agree. One of the most challenging thing I've done was the Tough Mudder. Do you know that race?
Oh, yes, yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did it with a team, and it was wonderful. And I remember finishing the race, and I had bruises all over, and I felt so good about myself. It was amazing. I feel like every time, well, I wish I was in that shape today. I want to go back. I need you in my life. Like,
Yeah. But do you remember the feeling you had when you finished, right? It was a feeling of euphoria, kind of, right?
I remember being freezing because it was like 30 degrees outside, and our first obstacle was the Chernobyl jacuzzi, where it's like a bath of ice water. Where you have to like go inside, and then you run in the skull, and you're all wet and cold. And there is the photo of the finish line with my team and all those very tough people. They're all like, they're trying to smile, but they can't because, everything sticks to you. I couldn't even take my shirt off. It was so cold and sticky. It was like, it was wet and cold and sticky, and we were trying to smile. It's a funny photo. But, and yeah, they give you beer. There's beautiful memories. Every time you do something out of your comfort zone, there is some magic happening. I remember training for it and running in Central Park in New York. It was awesome. It was really cool.
Yeah, and you bring, keep that photo, and it'll give you kind of, flashback memories. And I remember that, right? That photo itself could give you motivation, right?
Yeah, they give you this like orange headband. I was so proud of that orange. Yeah, I think I still have the shirt till today. It was a long time ago. Yeah, pretty cool. What are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
Oh my goodness. Well, for one, I think is loving yourself, and when you wake up in the morning is asking yourself truly, am I happy? And I think that's really, really important, and then surrounding yourself around really good people who are positive, who love you and will support you. And I think that's really important.
Amazing. So you love yourself and you wake up what if you wake up and you think, I'm not happy?
Then you have to fix it. Ask yourself, why aren't you happy? Why don't you love life? When you wake up in the morning, it's got to be a good day. It doesn't have to be the best day ever, but it has to be a pretty good day, right? And if you ask, are you happy, then you need to change it. I mean, as like I said, my grandmother's words are too tough is, life is short. And, you have to live every day like it's our last. And I think that's really important, especially as you get older. Right. And then it's people that you surround yourself with. If you're with somebody who brings you down, makes you feel bad, and you don't want to be around your friend's partner or whatever it may be, is you have to remove yourself from that because it will never get better. It'll just get worse.
The thing with this question, what I'm thinking, why I'm not happy, people like you who have more of a champion mindset will go to owning their stuff. Like, I'm not happy because I'm not doing this, this, and this. People who are which is most people, including me. Or I used to be. I'm not that anymore. It's like I trained myself. It's easy to go to, especially when you are not happy and low vibration, into it's the world's fault. It's the government. It's this guy got elected. The neighbor did that. The dog, like everybody else. So there is a separation between people who take ownership for their misery and try to lift themselves up to the people who are like, oh, this question is perfect. It's justifying why I'm depressed and I have nothing to do with it. So how do you do that switch in mindset?
I think it's excuses, right? Like, I know I speak to a high risk youth group, right? That they have come from terrible backgrounds, abuse and neglect and whatnot, right? But your, past does not dictate your future, and that's up to you. And I think it's just a form of laziness of when you're saying excuses of why your life isn't good, and you just want pity from other people, which is never going to happen. People don't like to pity other people. They may pat you on the back, but you're not looked upon, and you'll lose those friends or that support system, right? And to me, I think it's a matter of, you can't blame other people because it's just, you're responsible for your own destiny. Whatever happened in the past, like I said, does not dictate your future. And you can use that as strength. Any negativity that happened to you in your past, you can use that as power to help others, and get yourself through it and never repeat it. So I think, to me, when you're in that situation and you're blaming the world and whatnot, is that you're lazy and you're just looking for an excuse as to why you're in that position. And that's a great excuse to use.
Right. It's also conditioning. I think it's also with younger generation, with all the social media, all the keyboard warriors. I mean, there's a lot of bullying that's happening there, and a lot of, I think this is the word, commiserating around the current thing. I am for whatever the current thing is, and I am going to put like the flag or the whatever is the current thing, and I'm a part of that tribe, and we're all victim of our reality because so we support the current thing, and so you gain. Sometimes it's not about laziness; it's about you gain love and respect and connection, more connection by being a victim of something.
To a degree, though, like we're like sheep, we like to follow, right? You know what I mean? If you think about it, like a lot of people that are, well, I think the angle that you're getting to is when you're in certain groups that you don't understand and it's negativity, you get support from them, right? But really it's not, it's negative support. That's what you're getting. You're getting anger and you're getting whatever, that kind of to fill a void in yourself, right? That you're getting from someone else rather than yourself. Right? Like you said, I think a lot of people, they protest or whatever. They don't even know what they're protesting, or they're following a group of people. They don't even know what. But all they are is getting attention. You know what I mean? Like I said, we're sheep. We like to follow. It's a big group. And I think that if that's what it takes, then end up getting nowhere, and you'll end up dipping right back down to where you started from. If that's what you're looking for, that's not the way to go. Is you need to educate yourself first, right? Of what you're, who you're getting, around with, and anything that involves negativity or lying or, hatred that makes you feel good. How is that right? That doesn't make you feel good. It's just, you're just becoming one of them. You're becoming somebody who hates. And if that's what fills your void, then you have some issues, right? You got to surround yourself around people who serve something positive. They don't chant hatred or whatever, in negativity. And that's the difference. But we like to follow, like I said, anything negative. When you get a big following, you take out one of those individuals and put them by themselves. They don't even know what the hell they're doing. It's just that camaraderie of, oh my God, people screaming and yelling and they're patting you on the back. They're only patting you on the back because they're using you because you're just adding numbers to something that's stupid. It's negative, right? And I think that's really important is, like I said, we like to follow too much, but take yourself out of whatever group that's in. And when you're doing something good and when something's bad, right? And ask yourself, what's the purpose of this? And if this is who you really are, right? And I think for most people, point is no. And I think that's the thing. So is getting that influence from that negativity that, oh my God, it just fills a void that I can't fill myself. Right. And I'm getting praise from these coward people or whoever it is that you're whatever. And it's making me feel good for no reason. And really, it's just another direction to hitting rock bottom again. And that's exactly where you'll end up. You'll hit rock bottom.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's a great point. Where it just takes a moment of awareness of, why am I even doing this? Are these really my thoughts, or are these specific collective thoughts? Am I doing this for love and connection? Does it enhance my life? Does it fill my heart with joy and happiness? Am I going to get something out of it at the end of the day? Like, am I going to get my goals met? I'm going to make my life better? That's amazing. You just need that split moment of self-reflection to release yourself from that hallucination. Basically, it's a hallucinative, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's just being influenced by, the wrong people or the wrong crowd or the wrong message or whatever. Like, ask yourself, how is what I'm doing contributing to the cause? If I'm chanting something negative or, how is this helping the situation? And why do these people really want me to be here? What's the purpose? How am I contributing productively to this situation? You know what I mean? When you're surrounded around something, right? Or am I just here to make noise and make loudness or whatever, and go crazy? But I think, again, it goes to who you surround yourself with. Like, ask yourself who these people are, what's their motivation, and what's the big picture? What do they see? And is this something that you want to be part of? And I think especially young people, we're so influenced, right? Like, look at all the demonstrations that are happening. Half the people don't even know what the heck they're demonstrating. Seriously, they don't. They have no idea. But we like the crowd, we like the yelling, we like hatred. It gives, it gives us adrenaline when we're chanting and getting mad and spewing stuff from our mouths that we don't even know what we're doing. And that's an issue, and that's a problem. And that starts with somebody who has zero confidence, that are really at the bottom of the barrel. You know what I mean? They don't care about themselves. They don't care about how they look like. And they're just influenced by this hatred. And that's a hard one because, for one, good people don't do that. And it's hard to transition that, right? When it's like cults and stuff. Like, it's kind of going off topic here, but the cult is the same thing. You're so brainwashed into believing something that's so not true and so bad that you've completely lost control of your own identity.
Yeah, people do that because it fulfills, the Maslow pyramid of needs. Like, people are looking for variety. There's a lot of variety. People look for certainty. There's a lot of certainty in that. People are looking for contribution, love, and connection. There is a false sense of that in those gatherings, demonstrations, whatever the cause. And so they are meeting their needs in a very shallow way that takes them away from their actual goals and dreams.
Yeah, exactly. It just, yeah,
Right.
it deters you from doing anything productive. Really, you're just wasting minutes and hours and seconds of your life doing nothing, right? So,
Right. And life is precious, and you know that very well. And you achieved so much in your life, and you overcome so much. So thank you for that. And thank you for your story, and thank you for your love and your light, and all the good that you're doing in the world, and being this inspiration for all of us. Thank you so much.
thank you. Appreciate it. It was fun. It was a great hour. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And where can people find you?
On my website, probably best at leahgoldstein.com. You can follow me and what I'm doing, or Facebook, either or.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners. Remember to follow your heart, love yourself, surround yourself with good people, follow your dreams, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.